Have you ever heard a story so strange it sends a shiver down your spine? A story that makes you question whether some things are more than just a coincidence. Well, get ready, because today we're diving into one of the most chillingly accurate predictions in history. It involves a book, a ship, and a disaster that changed the world. This is the story of Morgan Robertson and his novel, Futility or the Wreck of the Titan. The year is 1898. The world is on the cusp of a new century, buzzing with technological marvels. An American writer named Morgan Robertson, a former merchant sailor, publishes a new novella. He calls it Futility. The story is about the largest, most luxurious ocean liner ever built. It's considered unsinkable by its creators, a true titan of the seas. On board are the wealthiest and most influential people in the world. But on a cold April night, this magnificent ship, racing through the North Atlantic, strikes an iceberg and sinks. The tragedy is made even worse because there aren't enough lifeboats for everyone. Thousands of people perish in the icy waters. The name of this fictional ship? The Titan. Now let's fast forward 14 years to 1912. The White Star Line launches its own marvel of engineering, the RMS Titanic. Just like the fictional Titan, it's the largest ship of its time, a floating palace celebrated as practically unsinkable. It carries a mix of high society elites and hopeful immigrants. On its maiden voyage, on a freezing April night, the Titanic strikes an iceberg in the North Atlantic. And just like in the book, it sinks, with a catastrophic loss of life made far worse by the shocking lack of lifeboats. The similarities are staggering, right? Let's break them down because this is where it gets truly bizarre. First, the names, Titan and Titanic. They sound almost identical, both evoking a sense of immense power and grandeur. It's the first layer of this uncanny parallel. Then there's the size and specs. Robertson's fictional Titan was described as being 800 feet long. The real Titanic, it was 882 feet long. That's incredibly close. Both were triple-screw propelled ships, capable of reaching similar top speeds around 24 to 25 knots. Both were the largest vessels of their day, celebrated for their opulence and perceived invincibility. The circumstances of the disaster are even more haunting. Both ships were sailing in April. Both hit an iceberg on the starboard side while traveling at high speed through the North Atlantic, roughly 400 nautical miles from Newfoundland. The fictional Titan was described as going full speed ahead. The real Titanic was also pushing its limits, trying to make good time. But the most tragic parallel lies in the human cost and the reason for it. In Robertson's novel Futility, he specifically highlights the critical shortage of lifeboats. The Titan only carried the bare legal minimum, not nearly enough for its 3,000 passengers and crew. When the real Titanic sank, the world was horrified to learn the exact same thing was true. It too only carried enough lifeboats for about half the people on board, adhering to outdated maritime safety regulations that hadn't kept up with the size of these new superliners. In both stories, this single failure turned a disaster into a historic tragedy. So, how could this happen? How could a little-known author write a story that seemed to predict one of the most famous disasters in history with such stunning accuracy 14 years before it occurred? Was Morgan Robertson a psychic? A prophet? Did he somehow glimpse into the future? Well, the man himself had a more grounded explanation. Robertson was no stranger to the sea. He had spent years as a merchant sailor and had a deep practical knowledge of ships and maritime trends. He wasn't just making things up, he was extrapolating. In the late 19th century, the shipping industry was in an arms race. Companies like the White Star Line and Cunard Line were constantly competing to build bigger, faster, and more luxurious ships. Robertson saw this trend. He understood that as ships got larger, the risks would also increase. He knew the North Atlantic was notorious for icebergs, especially in the spring. He also knew that safety regulations were dangerously lagging behind technology. The rule about lifeboats, for instance, was based on a ship's tonnage, not its passenger capacity. For these new colossal ships, that formula was a death sentence waiting to happen. So Robertson wasn't necessarily a mystic. He was an expert observer. He connected the dots. A massive, overconfident ship, pushed to its limits to set speed records, traveling through a known danger zone, with woefully inadequate safety equipment. From his perspective, a tragedy like this wasn't a matter of if, but when. He simply gave his imagined disaster a name and a narrative. The ship he imagined, the Titan, was a logical conclusion of the trends he was seeing all around him. After the real Titanic sank in 1912, Robertson's book, which had been mostly forgotten, was rediscovered. People were astounded. He was suddenly famous, hailed as a visionary. Some called him a prophet, while others dismissed it all as a wild coincidence. Robertson himself reportedly said, "I know what I'm writing about. That's all." He wasn't claiming supernatural powers, but rather a deep understanding of his subject matter. Interestingly, Robertson's book was originally titled Futility. It was only after the Titanic disaster that it was re-released with a more sensational title, The Wreck of the Titan, to capitalize on the public's fascination with the eerie parallels. The original title, Futility, is perhaps more telling. It speaks to the futility of human arrogance, of believing we can conquer nature, of building a supposedly unsinkable ship, and then failing to provide the most basic safety measures. The story of Morgan Robertson and the Titan serves as a powerful reminder. It's not just a spooky tale of a prediction come true. It's a testament to the power of observation and the dangers of hubris. It shows how one person, by carefully analyzing the present, can paint an incredibly accurate picture of the future. The tragedy of the Titanic wasn't an unpredictable act of fate. It was the result of a series of identifiable risks and poor decisions, risks that Robertson saw with crystal clarity more than a decade earlier. This incredible story makes you wonder what trends are happening right now in our own time. What are the unsinkable ships we are building today in technology, finance, or society? What warnings are being written by modern-day Robertsons, by experts who see the logical and potentially disastrous conclusions of our current paths? Are we listening, or will their words only be recognized as prophetic after another tragedy? It's a chilling thought, and it elevates this story from a simple historical curiosity to a timeless cautionary tale. The Wreck of the Titan wasn't just a story about a ship, it was a story about us. And it's a story that we should never forget. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating and strange coincidences. What do you think? Was it a prophecy, a coincidence, or just brilliant deduction? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the mysteries of the past. Thanks for watching and see you next time.